Family reunions in the Evans family were always a special kind of torture, but this year promised to be particularly unpleasant. I adjusted my simple blue dress, bought from a department store, a fact my cousins would undoubtedly notice and comment on, before walking into the grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Hotel. Emma. My Aunt Patricia's voice carried across the room, dripping with fake enthusiasm. We were just talking about you. Of course they were. In my family, if you weren't present to defend yourself, you were definitely being discussed. I plastered on my best teacher smile, the one I used when dealing with particularly difficult parents, and made my way over to the group. My cousins Diana and Stephen stood with their mother, both dressed in designer labels that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Diana was fresh from her latest business triumph, though everyone knew her father had bought her way into a senior position at his firm. Stephen had just made partner at his law firm, a fact he'd mentioned in approximately 15 Facebook posts. Emma darling, Diana air-kissed my cheek, her eyes scanning my outfit with barely concealed disdain. Still teaching at, what was it again? Lincoln High. Jefferson High, I corrected, keeping my voice level. Going on 8 years now. 8 years. Stephen's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. Wasn't that supposed to be temporary? You know, until you found a real career. I bit back the urge to remind him that his own daughter's private school tuition probably paid for several real teachers' salaries. Teaching is a real career, Stephen. One I happen to love. Oh, honey, Aunt Patricia patted my arm condescendingly. We know you're good with children, but surely you want more from life? Your cousin Diana just closed a $12 million deal last week. Diana preened at the mention of her achievement. The merger was quite challenging, she said, examining her manicured nails. But that's what happens when you aim high instead of settling. I took a sip of champagne, remembering the email I'd received just that morning. The one about Diana's challenging merger. The one sitting in my other inbox. The one none of them knew about. Speaking of settling, Stephen chimed in, are you still single? 32 is getting a bit late, isn't it? Though I suppose men in your income bracket might be limited. Before I could respond, my Uncle George joined the circle, his face flushed from too many scotches. Emma. I was just telling the Hendersons about our family's achievements. Had to skip you, of course. Bit embarrassing, all that potential wasted on finger painting and alphabet songs. 10 years ago his words would have cut deep. But I wasn't that naive girl anymore, the one who'd graduated top of her class from Harvard Business School only to shock everyone by choosing to teach instead of joining the family business. Actually, Uncle George, I'm the head of the English department now. We've implemented several innovative programs that have significantly improved our students' test scores. Department head. He laughed too loudly. Diana here runs an entire division. Stephen's firm handles millions in contracts. And you're proud of being head of, what, 20 teachers? 17, I corrected quietly. Plus support staff. Diana touched my arm with exaggerated sympathy. You know, I could put in a word for you at the firm. Entry level, of course, but it's never too late to start a proper career. God knows what you're living on with a teacher's salary. I thought about my other office, the one with the view of Central Park. About the boardroom where Diana's challenging merger would be discussed tomorrow morning. About the fact that I own not just the building her firm operated from, but also their main competitor. I manage, I said simply. The conversation shifted to more important matters. Stephen's new summer house, Diana's upcoming charity gala, the latest drama at the country club. I stood quietly, sipping my champagne and observing the family that had spent years underestimating me. They had no idea that their just-a-teacher relative was actually Elizabeth Bennett, the reclusive CEO of Bennett Educational Enterprises. The company that had, over the past decade, quietly become one of the largest educational management and consulting firms in the country. While they bragged about million-dollar deals, I was building a multi-billion-dollar empire. Every private school board, every educational technology contract, every major curriculum development project, they all came across my desk eventually, including Diana's precious merger. The truth was, I did love teaching. I still taught 2 English classes despite my other responsibilities. There was nothing quite like watching a student's eyes light up when they finally understood Shakespeare or found their voice in a piece of writing. But I was also brilliant at business. something my family had forgotten in their rush to dismiss my career choice. Emma, tell everyone your big news. My mother's voice cut through my thoughts. She was the only one who knew about my other life, and she'd been bursting to tell everyone for years. I shot her a warning look. Mom. About the house. Emma just bought a new house in the city, she announced proudly. Diana's interest perked up. Really? Manhattan? Which neighborhood? Upper East Side, my mother said before I could stop her. Near the park. Stephen nearly choked on his drink. Upper East Side? On a teacher's salary? Come on, Aunt Marie, that's impossible unless... Unless what, Stephen? I asked quietly. Well, unless you're doing something else on the side, he smirked. Something that pays a bit better than shaping young minds. The insinuation hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Diana covered her mouth to hide her snicker. Aunt Patricia looked scandalized but intrigued. I could have told them then. Could have revealed that I own not just one house near the park, but several buildings in the area. Could have mentioned that my little educational company had revenues larger than their combined annual salaries. But tomorrow would be so much more satisfying. You caught me, I said, smiling mysteriously. I do have other interests. I knew it. Diana crowed. What is it? Tutoring rich kids? Dating someone wealthy? Something like that, I replied, checking my watch. If you'll excuse me, I have an early meeting tomorrow. On a Saturday? Stephen scoffed. Important things don't just happen Monday to Friday, Stephen. Isn't that what you always say? I left them puzzling over my words, knowing that in less than 12 hours, they'd understand exactly what I meant. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp at Bennett Educational Enterprises headquarters. Diana's firm had been trying to acquire a chain of private schools, a deal that required approval from the Board of Education and several other educational oversight committees. Committees that, unbeknownst to them, I either chaired or controlled through Bennett Enterprises. Their proposal sat on my desk, marked urgent in bright red letters. $12 million was indeed a significant deal for Diana's firm. For me, it was a rounding error in my company's quarterly reports. I picked up my phone and called my assistant. Janet, for tomorrow's meeting with Sterling and Reed, please make sure the conference room temperature is set to slightly too warm. And have them wait about 20 minutes before showing them in. The usual power play setup? Janet asked, amusement in her voice. She'd been with me since the beginning and knew exactly how I handled these situations. Exactly. Also, pull all our files on their previous educational sector ventures. Especially the ones that failed. Already done. Should I order extra tissues for when you make the managing partner cry? I laughed, remembering the last time a pompous executive had underestimated just a teacher. No need. I don't think tears will be necessary this time. Just make sure the camera is recording when Diana realizes who she's actually meeting with. As I drove home to my impossible Upper East Side house, I thought about tomorrow's meeting. About Diana's face when she realized that her career-making deal depended on her cousin the teacher. About Stephen's reaction when he learned who really owned his firm's office building. But mostly I thought about my students. About how every major deal I closed meant more resources for public schools, more scholarships for deserving kids, more opportunities for teachers to actually teach instead of just teaching to tests. That's what my family never understood. I didn't choose teaching because I couldn't do better. I chose it because nothing else was better. Tomorrow they'd begin to understand that. And the lesson would be one they'd never forget. The Bennett Educational Enterprises headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming tower in downtown Manhattan. I arrived early as usual, taking my private elevator to the executive floor. Janet was already at her desk, a knowing smile on her face. Diana and her team arrived 15 minutes early, she reported. They're waiting in the warm conference room, getting increasingly nervous. She's already asked for water 3 times. I smiled, remembering Diana's smirk from last night. Perfect. Let them wait another 10 minutes. How's she dressed? Designer suit probably cost more than my car. She keeps mentioning that she has a personal connection to the CEO. If only she knew. I took my time reviewing their proposal one last time. The acquisition they wanted to make was actually solid. Diana's team had done good work. But their implementation plan showed a complete lack of understanding about educational institutions. They saw numbers, not students. Profits, not potential. At exactly 9:20, I nodded to Janet. Showtime. The conference room door opened and Diana's voice carried through clearly. Finally. Do they know who we are? Making us wait like... She stopped mid-sentence as I walked in. The confusion on her face was priceless. Designer suit suddenly looking less pristine after 30 minutes in the too warm room. Emma. She blinked rapidly. What are you lost? I sat down at the head of the table, opening their proposal with deliberate slowness. Good morning, Diana. Gentlemen. I nodded to the other executives from her firm. Shall we discuss your proposal for acquiring the Winterbrook Academy chain? Diana's face went through a fascinating series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, growing horror. You're the assistant? Elizabeth Bennett, I corrected smoothly. CEO and founder of Bennett Educational Enterprises. Though you might know me better as your cousin Emma, the just a teacher. The other executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Diana's face had gone pale, her carefully applied makeup now showing stress lines. This is impossible, she whispered. You're a high school teacher. I am, I agreed, turning to page 3 of their proposal. I also run one of the largest educational management companies in the country. Now about these projected numbers for student enrollment. The next hour was both professional and excruciating. I dissected their proposal point by point, highlighting every flaw in their understanding of educational management. Diana, who had probably stayed up late memorizing figures, could barely string 2 sentences together. Your financial projections are solid, I concluded, closing the folder. But your implementation plan shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how schools actually work. You're treating this like a typical corporate acquisition. It's not. We can revise the plan, Diana stammered. Maybe you could guide us? I leaned back in my chair. I could. But first, let's discuss last night. The other executives looked confused. Diana's face flushed red. Last night, you and our family made it very clear what you think about educators. About people who choose to dedicate their lives to teaching. Would you like me to play the recording of your comments for your colleagues? Emma, please, Diana's voice cracked. I didn't mean. You meant every word, I cut in smoothly. And that's exactly why your firm isn't ready to handle educational acquisitions. You don't respect educators. You don't understand the responsibility that comes with shaping young minds. I stood up, straightening my jacket, a simple but elegantly tailored piece that probably cost more than Diana's entire outfit. Your proposal is denied. However, I held up a hand as Diana's face crumpled. I'm willing to offer an alternative. The executives leaned forward eagerly. Bennett Enterprises will acquire Winterbrook Academy. We'll contract your firm to handle certain aspects of the financial transition. Under our close supervision, of course. You'll get a fair commission, though notably less than your original proposal. That's blackmail, Diana whispered. No, Diana. That's business. I smiled. Though I thought you'd be proud. Isn't this the kind of ruthless corporate maneuvering you admire so much? As they filed out of the conference room looking shell-shocked, I called out one last time. Oh, and Diana, you give my best to Stephen. I'm having lunch with his managing partner tomorrow to discuss the renewal of their office lease. In my building. I waited until the door closed before allowing myself a small laugh. Janet came in with fresh coffee, grinning broadly. That was better than television, she said. Should I expect any more family members to show up in our proposals? Actually, yes. Uncle George's company is bidding on the new technical training contract for the state. He doesn't know we're the ones who handle those evaluations. You're evil, Janet said admiringly. I love it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of actual work, reviewing curriculum proposals, approving funding for innovative teaching programs, meeting with educational researchers. This was the part of my job I truly loved, the part my family would never understand. At 3 p.m. my mother called. Diana just called me crying, she said without preamble. Something about you destroying her career? I offered her firm a fair deal, I replied. It's not my fault they underestimated the teacher in the family. Mom was quiet for a moment. Your father would be so proud of you, honey. He always said you had his head for business and my heart for teaching. You didn't have to choose. You found a way to do both. My father. The successful businessman who'd married a kindergarten teacher and never once looked down on her profession. Who'd supported my decision to teach even when the rest of the family was horrified. Who'd left me enough seed money to start Bennett Enterprises, with a note saying, "Change education from the inside out." The family's in an uproar, Mom continued, amusement creeping into her voice. "Stephen just found out you own his building. Aunt Patricia is having vapors. Uncle George is trying to figure out if you're the Bennett in Bennett Educational Enterprises." "Good," I said. "Maybe they'll learn something." Speaking of learning, Mom's voice turned serious. "What are you going to do about the family reunion next year?" I smiled, thinking about the email I'd received that morning. "Well, funny you should ask. I just bought the Metropolitan Hotel chain. I thought we might make some changes to the guest list." Mom's laughter rang through the phone. "Now who's being petty?" "Not petty, Mom. Educational. After all, I am a teacher." Over the next few weeks, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Diana's firm accepted my offer, though she took a mysterious, extended vacation shortly after. Stephen suddenly became very interested in pro bono educational law cases. Uncle George's company withdrew their bid for the technical training contract. The most surprising change came from my younger cousins. Suddenly, teaching didn't seem like such a waste of potential anymore. 3 of them applied to education programs that fall. I continued teaching my 2 English classes at Jefferson High. If anything, my students seemed to work harder after the story got out about their teacher being a secret CO. "If Ms. Evans can run a company and teach, I can definitely finish my homework," became a common refrain. 1 year later, I hosted the family reunion in my hotel. The guest list was different this time. Alongside the usual family members were teachers, principals, educational researchers, and others who dedicated their lives to teaching. People my family had once looked down on. Diana came much humbler than before. She'd started a foundation funding arts education in public schools. "You taught me an important lesson," she admitted over dinner. "Success isn't just about profit margins." Stephen's firm now handled legal affairs for several educational charities, pro bono. Uncle George had joined the board of a local public school, where he was learning just how challenging and rewarding educational administration could be. As I looked around the room, seeing my 2 worlds finally merge, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about teaching others to see what they've been blind to all along. My father had been right. I didn't have to choose between business and teaching. Sometimes the most important lessons happen in boardrooms instead of classrooms. Sometimes the students aren't children but adults who need to learn respect, humility, and the true value of education. Bennett Educational Enterprises continues to grow, but its mission remains the same: to support and improve education at every level. My family finally understands that being just a teacher was never about settling for less. It was about fighting for something more important than money or status. Every morning, I still stand in front of my English class, helping students discover the power of words. And every afternoon, I sit in my corner office, using my business acumen to make sure other teachers have the resources they need to do the same. The nameplate on my classroom door still reads, "Ms. Evans, English Department." The one on my office door reads, "Elizabeth Bennett, Sue." Both are equally important. Both are equally me. After all, the best teachers never stop teaching, and the best lessons often come from unexpected sources. Sometimes, those sources just happen to be wearing simple department store dresses to family reunions, waiting for the perfect moment to start class.